Thanks to Mr. Darkins for summing up all of the news going on today. Yeah, let's start with Harvard being the laughingstock of the world for Ivy League education.
Private institutions have to accept they're not entitled to federal funds. And that's the decision Harvard's going to make. Do they want to continue down the path they've gone where they don't protect Jewish students, where they embrace anti-Semitism, or do they want to work with the Trump administration and we all work forward together? I hope they choose the latter path, but yesterday's decision was not promising.
In an open letter announcing the lawsuit, Harvard President Alan Garber wrote in part, "As a Jew and as an American, I know very well that there are valid concerns about rising anti-Semitism. To address it effectively requires understanding, intention, and vigilance. Harvard takes that work seriously. This, as Democrats praise the pushback against Trump."
Universities need to stand up, and I'm so proud of President Garber at Harvard University for standing up. And I'm proud of the president at Princeton, who also has been standing up.
Standing up for what? Trying to maintain the scam where you've got so much money that your whole institution lives off of interest. You're basically a mutual fund with a university attached, and you continue to charge people more and more and indoctrinate people into just crazy thoughts and not helping society.
To the Trump administration.
President Garber says that Harvard has taken many steps to address anti-Semitism. He has also signed a letter, along with more than 150 other university and college presidents. They're all denouncing President Trump's demands.
Now, let's make sure you understand what's really going on here, okay? Listen, Harvard is not the victim here. They are the problem, and let me explain why. When you take federal money, you better follow the federal law, and when you don't, the president of the United States can claw back that money whenever they want. That's the bottom line to it. And the irony here is Democrats were cheering Biden on when he was doing the same thing. You don't think he pressured universities to fall in line as it pertains to men playing in women's sports or as it pertains to adopting trans-inclusive policies? Let's get real here, folks.
But it's the bigger picture. If he gets away with this, he can start going down the road with future universities. And it's also part of a bigger strategy that you see Donald Trump doing, where anyone who disagrees with him, silencing the Associated Press, taking a strong stance against universities, trying to take away the C3 status of some of these environmental organizations that he's working on this week. I mean, this is a picture, a broader picture that he's trying to paint of, if you don't agree with me, I'm going to figure out a way to silence you, and that's the problem.
You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I assume you all know what's been going on these campuses. They are chasing the Jewish kids around the campuses. They are terrorizing them. They are violating their civil rights. The administration believes they have violated their federally protected rights. This all goes back to the core issue. The Ivy League schools and a lot of universities did not stand up for Jewish students when they should have, and when they were warned by the U.S. Congress last year. They should have done it then. Now they're locked in these battles now. You all say these campuses should fight back against Trump. Who are they fighting for? The people who are terrorizing the Jewish kids? I hope that's not what you mean. I think Trump is standing up for these Jewish students in a good way, and I hope he prevails.
This is irrelevant from that, Scott.
It is not. This is the core issue.
I love how she's like, "Oh, I'm just, that's not connected." You know, like half of these decisions and half of these people who are continue to back these insane arguments, back Palestinian terrorism. They're making these decisions off of misinformation from TikTok and the like, and then promoting it at their dinner parties and happy hours and have no clue on reality and what's going on.
Need to.
And here's the other thing we have to understand about Harvard. They were already under fire for anti-Semitism, donor backlash, and leadership scandals before President Trump was even elected. So them trying to pin it on Trump and say, well, he's going after them. No, this is called accountability because the last president didn't do anything about it. Why do you think they're on their fourth president at that university? They got issues.
Response to Harvard's lawsuit.
Sure. Well, the president has made it quite clear that it's Harvard who has put themselves in the position to lose their own funding by not obeying federal law. And we expect all colleges and universities who are receiving taxpayer funds to abide by federal law. It's quite simple. And the president made it clear he's not going to tolerate violations of federal law. He's not going to tolerate illegal harassment and violence towards Jewish American students or students of any faith on our campuses across the country. And so we will be responding to the lawsuit in court. And again, it's quite simple. If you want federal dollars, obey federal law.
Yeah, that's as simple as someone could make it. I do know that Democrats won't see it that way because they don't operate in reality. They're operating in their own world where they believe that President Trump is violating their free speech rights. I mean, can you believe that? That's what they say this is all about. Now, to give you an example of what I'm saying, here is a professor from Harvard who claims that that's exactly what President Trump is doing.
The Trump administration is making claims about things that in many ways violate common sense. It's a pretext in order to attack what they consider to be their political enemies. Donald Trump does not care about anti-Semitism, and I don't think any reasonable person would believe he does. He has people in his inner circle that give Nazi salutes. He's dined with white supremacists, and they have said.
So anyone who keeps repeating this narrative, they know they're lying. They know they're being deceptive. They know they're trying to change the narrative off of what's really happening, and it's sad. And they're a joke. I don't know who this person is, but yeah, it is anyone any good reporter should be pushing back on this ridiculous over the top narrative.
Over and over again that there's an issue of anti-Semitism, acute anti-Semitism on Harvard's campus in a way that demands some kind of civil rights intervention. But the acute anti-Semitism does not exist on Harvard's campus. To the extent that there might be anti-Semitism, just like any other bigotry that might exist at Harvard, like it would exist anywhere, that's something that Harvard could take steps to redress. But it is not something that requires the cancellation of things like cancer funding for cancer research or research on Alzheimer's disease or all the other things that Donald Trump has tried to attack for political purposes.
Okay, so he doesn't believe there's acute anti-Semitism on the campuses of Harvard. And I would just push back on him and say, well, why don't we just look at the numbers? This was published today by the ADL. Look at it. 2023 and 2024. That's outrageous. And so what we're looking at here is a 10-year review of the anti-Semitic incidents. And as you could see, like I just stated, it's just outrageous. 8,000 and then 9,000. Wow, it's an 893% increase over the last decade. I'd love to know what he thinks about that. And in our next story, which is actually great news, the U.S. Supreme Court is leaning towards parents who object to elementary school LGBTQ storybooks. Now, this is in regards to children being exposed to books that we know are talking about things they have no business reading.
The Supreme Court's conservative majority signaled today that it will require schools to provide opt-outs for parents who have objections to LGBTQ books read in elementary schools. If they go that route, it would continue the court's years-long push to expand religious rights.
It looks like the justices, from the oral arguments that went for an unusually intense, passionate 2.5 hours this morning, Brianna, it looks like they're going to rule with the parents who have challenged the Montgomery County, Maryland School District over books like The Knight and the Prince or Uncle Bobby's Wedding that the school had said there's no opt-out provision, and during the course of the Q&A this morning, it emerged that really Montgomery County stands alone in not having any kind of opt-out provision.
Yeah, so once again, this is another issue where it's just common sense. I don't understand why people are fighting this, but let's give you a little bit more information. The Montgomery County District in 2022 approved a handful of storybooks that feature lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender characters as part of its English language arts curriculum in order to better represent the diversity of families in the county. They got to give me a break here. Come on. Are you serious? The storybooks do not instruct about gender or sexuality and are available for teachers to use. Wait a minute. You don't have to instruct or even teach people about how to transition to these genders or what their sexuality may be. The fact that that book shows it is enough. It means that these books see the world in that way. So one way or another, we have to understand something. A child's brain is a sponge. You don't have to do much to get them to start seeing things in a different way.
So
do you believe, though, that there's
that
there's an appropriate age to have a discussion? These are 4 to 6-year-olds, and they're being read, and this is out loud in the classroom, not just, oh, this is a book on the shelf in the library. If there's a particular child that, you might want to read this with, but, just as an example, my pronouns are like the weather. They change depending on how I feel, and that's okay because they're my words. Sometimes I use all the pronouns I can think of, just as one example here.
Let me put it this way.
Go ahead.
Martha, and I think that this will be shocking to you. These would not be the books I would be reading as a classroom teacher to kids who are 4 to 6 years old.
Yeah.
And I say this, I went through the New York City public school system. I was a teacher during when we
obsessed they are with this case, meaning they're willing to fight this all the way to the Supreme Court. I know the legal fees has to be in the millions of dollars. And what's interesting here on the screen, you got gays against groomers. They don't even agree with this. I don't understand how we can live in a world where they're not going to allow parents to opt out of this nonsense.
I'm going to teach gay sex to your 6-year-old, whether you like it or not, is a powerful argument to the Supreme Court. Maybe the most perverted argument the Supreme Court has ever heard. Judge, can Justice Alito set these lawyers on fire?
I don't think it's a good
idea.
Okay,
probably not. Can he call Chris Hansen to catch a predator? Because this is a confession. These people in Montgomery County are sick. And look at these titles, Dana. Pride Puppy, Uncle Bobby's Wedding. I did a deep dive. It's more than just gay romance. Drag queens, F is for feather boa, I is for intersex. And they've managed to do something no one's ever done in the history of civilization. Unite Jews, Muslims, and Catholics together under one banner. Now, when all of these people have fought wars and killed each other for centuries, maybe you realize you're doing something wrong. You're right. The teachers now have this guidance session where they will facilitate the conversation and answer questions to the students. What kindergartner has a question about cross-dressing? And do you trust a purple-haired woman with a nose ring and a trans flag on her desk to have an honest conversation with your kid? Absolutely not.
And remember, this case isn't about removing the books from the school. The case is about allowing parents to opt their children out of the classroom that is sharing those books. So that's a key difference that people should be aware of. All right, so in our next story, RFK Jr. dropped a bombshell announcement. They are now banning all artificial dyes in our food supply.
Today, the FDA is taking action to remove petroleum-based food dyes from the U.S. food supply and from medications. For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals. The scientific community has conducted a number of studies raising concerns about the correlation between petroleum-based synthetic dyes and several health conditions, such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, obesity, diabetes, insulin resistance, cancer, genomic disruption, GI issues, as I've seen in the hospital, and allergic reactions.
Now, one of the best examples of this is just taking your regular bag of Skittles. If you look at the United States version, you've got red 40, yellow 5, blue 1, blue 2, and titanium dioxide. You know what's interesting? If you go to Europe, it's natural coloring, and the titanium dioxide is banned. And this person actually have a little graphic for us to take a look at here. Here's another product, Gatorade. If you compare the United States version to Germany, red 40 is in Gatorade, not in the Germany version.
Food dye is just a no-brainer. Nobody wants to eat petroleum. Everybody knows there's enough science out there that we know it's terrible for you. That causes health problems, but also behavioral problems. Healthy person has 1,000 dreams. The sick person only has one. And right now, there's 60% of the people in this country who have only one dream. If they can make it through a day without pain, with energy, without having to take medications. And we are going to change that for our country.
Again, this is a no-brainer, common sense issue. It just makes you wonder, why has it taken so long for the people in D.C. to do something about this? Well, it's because of money. We all know that, okay? Huge conflict of interest within the food industry. We know that as well. And for the people in the back who are much older who say, well, what's the difference? Why should we ban all of this stuff. I mean, when I ate this food when I was a kid, I didn't have any problems. You're right. You did eat this food when you were a kid, but it did not have the same ingredients. I mean, that's the big factor here.
When I was growing up, I ate Fruit Loops for breakfast every day, and I turned out just fine. Now, I would argue he turned out like a maniac. He's hyperactive and deranged, but does he have a point? What are these food dyes actually doing to kids especially?
Yeah, well, if you look at the ingredients for Fruit Loops 20 years ago, it was very, very different than it is today. And today we use chemicals in Fruit Loops that are banned in virtually every country in the world. So if you buy Fruit Loops today in Canada, it is.
This has been known for many, many years, 10, 20, 30 years. The red dye causes cancer, causes behavior issues. All these dyes are old, out of date. They don't need to be needed. Even the change in the cost for the food manufacturers is minimal. It's just pure laziness and greed, and perhaps some secret addiction issues that they want to continue. Kind of like cigarettes. They're going to fight it tooth and nail to the end. Anyway, looks like some progress, some positivity midway through the week. What do you guys think?